Dun, 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 dun,
What's
dun.
up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back, finally, after over a month
Alrighty.
hiatus
You
to a
ready?
Chat with the Pack. This is our sixth episode, Chat with the
Alright.
Pack, episode 6. I'm your co-host, Kyle
Three,
McGee, alongside the
two,
legendary Drew
one.
Blazer. Drew, good to see you again. Yeah, I just checked. It is episode 6. Crazy. So we haven't done a podcast since March 27th. Lots been going on since then. Rebecca and I closed on our first house, got
Oh,
engaged.
hello,
So I was
hello.
busy
I
for a
think this
few
is episode
weekends
six.
and a
Not
few
sure.
weeks,
Oh,
obviously,
oh okay.
dealing with
Alright.
that, moving stuff in. We do have a vlog on my personal YouTube channel. The link will be in the description below about that experience. But then not too long after that, actually got pretty sick. I was in contact with Drew the entire time. I was out about 2 weeks. Actually missed 2 weeks of work as well. Rebecca's a nurse. She missed 2 weeks as well. Good news is we did. She did get the COVID test. Came back negative. Obviously, with that, there's a little bit of speculation. She was telling me that apparently the tests have a 40% false negative. So, I mean, you can do with that information what you will. But we have to go with the belief that we didn't have it, maybe just had bronchitis. I will tell you, I did have a fever
Oh,
first couple days, and then it turned into that dry cough, shortness of breath, and she dealt with that as well. Yeah, it was not fun. That first like week and a half or so was pretty rough. Didn't really have energy to do anything. Um, but back at it now, feeling better. So here we are. Yeah, lots happened since we last talked. So there's a lot we could talk about. Um,
no.
I do want to start this off by
Here we
saying,
are.
it is
Yeah.
Saturday, May 16th, 2020. The news broke not long before we started this podcast. So on behalf of myself, Drew Blazer, and the entire pack, I would like to say rest in peace to the legendary comedic actor Fred Willard. Passed away today at, I believe, 87 years old, either 87 or 86. Um, Very sad day to
Mm,
hear that news. Rebecca had never seen Anchorman before, and we
yeah.
actually just watched that the other weekend, and he, he was phenomenal in that, and he's got a May 29th, 13 days from now, just under 2 weeks, that the long-awaited Space Force show on Netflix comes out starring Steve Carell, made by Greg Daniels. And Fred Willard will be in that in a now posthumous role, and obviously we'll be looking forward to that. He was always great. Anything he was in,
Yeah.
he had a brief appearance in That 70s Show. He made a few appearances on The Bachelor and Bachelorette in recent seasons. Had a recurring role as the principal in Family Matters. Just yeah, I mean, we could go on and on. He's got a career dating back decades, and yeah, just very sad to hear of his passing.
Yeah.
But on to more positive things,
Alright.
thankfully. Um, so let's talk about probably the most
Yeah.
raw emotional moment that WWE's had in years, and this was this past Monday on Raw. Becky, yeah, Becky
No
Lynch
pun
is
intended,
pregnant.
yeah.
Her and Seth Rollins are expecting their child. I did not watch Raw live, but I remember hearing that she had an announcement. And I kind of looked at it, I was like, now that I think about it, she didn't wrestle at Money in the Bank, and she hasn't been active pretty much since WrestleMania. And there was a lot of speculation that she probably was pregnant. What were you thinking when you heard the announcement was going to happen?
Um, I don't know. I didn't know what she was going to announce, really.
Yeah,
I thought maybe she got injured or something, maybe, but
yeah,
yeah,
that was
pregnant.
the two
Wow.
main speculations, was either injury or pregnancy. Thankfully, happy to hear it was pregnancy and not an injury. Um, that moment with her and Asuka was really cool. You could see the genuine emotion Asuka
Oh,
was
yeah.
showing. She even broke character when she realized
Yeah,
that Becky was pregnant.
that was great.
Just just a beautiful moment that we don't get in modern day WWE, and really just in modern day sports entertainment in general. You can't. Those are authentic, raw moments. You can't create those moments. Those are real, and it was really nice to see that.
Yeah, and I don't
It,
think
it, it is.
Oscar probably didn't know anything about it beforehand.
It didn't look like
No.
she did. No, that's not to say she didn't, but it didn't look
Yeah.
like she did. The way she reacted. Um, yeah, it is one of those where you kind of wish a crowd could have been there for that, because that would have been just amazing with a crowd. I feel like the reaction would have been absolutely amazing. But given the circumstances, I still think that you can't take anything away from how special that moment was.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And obviously, very happy for Seth and Becky.
Yeah.
Now, did you see what the reported plans for Becky were before she got pregnant?
Oh no.
So Becky was set to defend the title against Nia Jax at Money in the Bank, and Shayna Baszler was going to win the Money in the Bank briefcase.
Oh. Okay.
But then they found out that Becky was pregnant, obviously beforehand, so plans changed, and I guess they decided to go forward with Asuka winning. Which, I mean, I guess worked out. I think Asuka, realistically, I think Asuka deserves this. I agree with the statement Becky Lynch made was, you've been the best female wrestler in the world for years now, and it's time you get recognized for it. I wholeheartedly agree with that.
And she's been really good during this whole pandemic stuff too.
Yeah, from what I've obviously not been watching. I don't really
no,
watch
all
a
right.
whole lot. I mainly keep up with it, and I'll watch highlights. But yeah, from what I've seen, Asuka's done phenomenal with the pandemic and the no crowd. So very happy for her. I didn't watch the Money in the Bank ladder match. What were your thoughts on it? I saw a few spots of it. I saw Baron Corbin throwing people off the roof, which I felt like could have been cool if it weren't for the fact that Rey Mysterio was just on Raw the next night.
Well, he explained it really well on Monday too. He was like, just at the last second, I just kind of fell on a roof below the roof or something, and saved myself.
So basically, the explanation is there was like a kind of like a floor beneath them, like a balcony beneath them that he landed on.
Yeah, and he pretty much explained how he saved himself to kind of, I guess, make the whole situation better. So
I guess that works. I did hear that there was a big stunt that was planned, and I kind of figured that's what it was going to be. I was like, well, they're obviously throwing somebody off the roof. Now, apparently, Vince McMahon, they said, Vince will never have people do something he won't do himself, and did the bump himself to prove that it was safe. What do you think of that?
It's like, Vinny, how old are you, my friend? Come on now. But yeah, it's good for him to kind of have that attitude, but at the same time, he's 75 years old.
Yeah. I mean, I do think it kind of makes the guys be like, well, obviously, I have to do this now.
Yeah, and it makes them feel like they have to do it.
Yeah.
Well,
Which, speaking of that, on a different note, I was actually watching Dana White Looking for a Fight here recently, which if you've not watched that, really good show. It's a reality show that they put on YouTube, and it's Dana White goes to different places, and he, he'll go to town, and he, checks out the best food places in that town, checks out like the local attractions, and then he goes to see some fights that night, and he's trying to find fighters. And sometimes he finds the next potential top star, and then other times he finds a dud and doesn't find anyone. Actually, he found Mickey Gall, who was CM Punk's debut opponent, on Looking for a Fight. The premiere episode, Mickey Gall called out CM Punk when he realized Dana was in the crowd, and there's quite a few fighters in the UFC who came from that show. But there was a show he did in Hawaii, and it was with Matt Serra, UFC legend, and Dean Thomas, former UFC fighter, are his co-hosts. And they went to Hawaii, and they went to this rock where you do the cliff diving off the rock, and it's like 20, 30 feet. And Dana, I guess, was up there for hours and hours trying to work up the courage to jump, and he never did.
Yeah.
They were up there at 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and they were there till the sun was going down. And his cameramen were like, look, Dana, sun's going down. We've got 5 more minutes of light. You got to go now. And he kind of walked up to the edge and then didn't end up doing it. So it's kind of like, you got Dana, obviously the exact opposite way, because Matt Serra and Dean Thomas both did the jump.
That's funny.
Dana White's like, yeah, I'm not doing that. But, to Dana's credit, he didn't need to do it.
No, and I mean, some people, that really freaks them out.
Freaked
me out too, yeah.
I can't roast him. I mean, I've got a terrible fear of heights. We actually went to a pretty nice quarry up in northern Indy about 2 years ago now, with my old coworker Jay, Rebecca, and I, and Jay's husband,
Oh,
and
cool.
she was like, "Yeah, they've got great diving spots and everything." I was like, "Oh, cool, sounds good." And I actually went up to the 20-foot one,
Yeah.
and I went to jump, and I looked down, and
It's
I
like,
was like, "Nope."
oh, yeah,
And it's
no.
it's one of those where I've got a really bad fear of heights. You've known that about me for a long time. And what I've explained to people is, like with my fear of heights personally, like when I get that fear, it's not like adrenaline pumping, like where you're like, oh God, here we go. No, like my body shuts down.
Yeah.
Like I was literally doing the running start and like I just stopped and I just froze and I had to walk away.
Yeah, I mean, nothing wrong with that. A lot of people are like that.
Yep.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I totally get it from Dana White's perspective. I was just kind of sharing that little insight that it's speaking of a boss who, oh, I won't make you guys do anything I won't do. Well,
Yeah.
Dana said, fuck
It's
that.
like, nah. Yeah.
Um, yeah, so Otis won Money in the Bank.
Yeah.
It looks like Heavy Machinery's pretty much done from what I'm gathering. What do you think of that?
Well, I mean, I have no idea where Tucker is. Like, is he just not showing up? I don't know. But,
I don't know. A lot of people are saying, man, Marty Jannetty might be finally catching
oh,
a break.
oh, God.
Because someone said, you look at Heavy Machinery, Otis, is their tag team hasn't even officially broken up. He's already got his own singles Titantron. He's already tagging with other people. He tagged with Braun Strowman on
Yeah.
SmackDown, and Tucker just isn't being used.
No. That's really
So
sad.
it is.
Yeah.
I always liked them as a tag team when I did watch. So what are your thoughts on Otis as Mr. Money in the Bank? Do you think it can work?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, he's really over. He's a good character, and people like him. So I think
Now I see a
it's good to give him a chance. Yeah.
I see a lot of people are saying that they hope that he uses the Money in the Bank briefcase to cash in for the tag team titles with Tucker.
Yeah. Can you even
Um,
do that?
you'd have to look in the rules. I'm
Yeah,
sure
the
you
official
probably
rule
can.
book. Yeah.
I'm sure you probably could. I mean, obviously a video game's a different rule, but if you remember, you can kind of cash in for any title with the
Oh,
Money in the Bank on that.
yeah.
I don't know if WWE officially states it has to be a world championship or not.
I mean, I always thought they always said for world titles. So I don't.
Yes, but I mean, yeah, no, I agree. But one way of looking at it is, aren't the tag team championships considered the
Yeah.
world tag championships?
Ah,
So I
yeah.
mean, you could make the offer. You could make the offer. What am I talking about? You can make the argument that yeah, the tag team championships are world championships for tag teams.
No, that's true. Yeah. Hmm.
Would I go as far as to say that's what should happen? No.
Nah.
I think Otis has the potential. It's just all about how they book him. I think you need to keep that comedic side to him because he's got that charm. But I do think you need to add some seriousness to him as well.
Yeah. True. Uh,
He's got to be taken as a serious threat.
and I wouldn't rush into cashing it in anytime soon either. So
No, absolutely
yeah.
not. Do the teases every now and then,
Yeah.
obviously, but I would never do a full on. I wouldn't do a full on. He's cashing in. If you're gonna try and book him as a top star, I would push him that way for a little while first.
Yeah. All right.
What do you think of the Sami Zayn situation? For those who don't know, Sami Zayn has been stripped of the Intercontinental title due to being unable to compete.
Oh man. Um. Hmm.
Because I know
Yeah.
you had a point you brought up to me last night.
Yeah.
I kind of want you to kind of want to see your thoughts on it more
Yeah.
in depth.
My thought was I thought it was strange how Brock Lesnar doesn't have to be on Raw or be on any of the shows for several months and be WWE champion. Nobody, the company doesn't blink an eye at all. But if Sami Zayn chooses to stay home for a little bit, they strip him of the title. I
Yeah,
just,
I can't fully disagree with that argument.
yeah,
Just because. But I will say, playing devil's advocate, kind of like I told you last night, one way of looking at it is Brock Lesnar has a written out contract that says he's going to appear this many times. He will appear when they want him to. And Brock Lesnar shows up when he's asked.
yeah,
So I think the difference in this situation is WWE knew what they were getting themselves into when they booked Brock Lesnar as champion. They knew, hey, we're going to have a champion on these specific dates. We're going to have him for the Saudi Arabia shows, a few Raws building up to that. We're going to have him for the Royal Rumble and a show or two building up to that. We'll have him for the shows building up to Mania. We'll have him for SummerSlam and maybe Survivor Series.
Yeah.
So, they booked themselves into that situation and they knew what they were doing, so they used that time to build somebody up to challenge him at those points. And then I think when you look at the Sami Zayn situation, and again, I feel for Sami Zayn. I think it sucks. I've always loved Sami Zayn. I love that he won the Intercontinental title. As you know, you and I talked about that off the podcast, and I was beyond thrilled, and I thought it was years overdue. But to play devil's advocate here, do you put that championship on hold because Sami Zayn is unable to compete due to the pandemic? He's choosing to stay at home. WWE's not keeping it at home. He's choosing to stay at home until this ends. Well, we don't know when it's going to end.
No.
So do you put the title on hold until then, or do you go, you know what, Sammy, Intercontinental title's got to go on. We're going to do a title. We're going to vacate the title. When you're ready to come back, we'll bring you back in.
Yeah, I completely get that because, Brock Lesnar, it's guaranteed. You know what dates he's going to be there. Sammy, you don't know.
Yeah, you don't know. Will Sammy be back in June, July? Will he be back next May?
Yeah.
Say this does continue for a whole year until we have the vaccine.
Oh.
Do you hold the title on Sami Zayn for a year without a title defense?
Yeah, no, you don't.
We don't know when this is going to end. You can't do that.
Yeah.
But don't get me wrong, it still sucks. But here's another way of looking at it. They've booked themselves into a really good spot by stripping Sami Zayn. Say Sami Zayn's able to come back by SummerSlam. You've got a new Intercontinental Champion by Backlash, maybe? Sami Zayn versus that Intercontinental Champion at SummerSlam. You could do the Shawn Michaels Razor Ramon match.
Oh.
I never lost the title. We're going to find out who the undisputed Intercontinental Champion is.
Yeah, just like CM Punk and John Cena back in the day.
Yeah, there's a great storyline there.
Yeah.
That's how you do it. So if anything, they actually have made for more intriguing television by stripping him.
Yeah. Well, it's fine then. Yeah, it works out.
So hopefully that's actually what they do. I'm not going to guarantee that's what they do. I'm hoping that's what they do.
Yeah.
What do you think obviously all these WWE releases happened. Drake Maverick, from what I'm hearing, I'm kind of, even though I don't watch, I'm kind of planning on going and watching this 205 tournament for the interim Cruiserweight Championship, which shout out to the UFC and boxing for that interim title thing, by the way.
Oh, I know.
I heard that even though Drake Maverick's been released, he's had 2 phenomenal matches, and it's like they're almost looking like they might have him win it, and a lot of people are thinking that video he posted, which was very emotional and sad to watch, might have potentially resulted in him just being furloughed instead of released.
So do you think it was, planned out, a work all along?
No. I do not believe it was a work all along. And here's why I don't think that. Don't get me wrong, WWE's not out of question for doing insensitive things. They do insensitive things all the time. But when you've got several people, longtime employees being released, you had Mike Chioda was released.
Yeah.
Do you really do a storyline where you fake one of your people being fired?
Yeah, no.
That kind of is that would kind of be a BS move to all the people you did fire.
Yeah.
Because then they're like, okay, well, why wasn't mine a storyline?
Yeah. Well,
I think the thing with Drake Maverick is Drake Maverick captivated a lot of people. He put a lot of emotion in that video. And they do have 90-day clauses, so they're paying them for 90 days. So they have 90 days. WWE has 90 days to change their mind, technically. These guys are technically still WWE contractors for 90 days because they're getting paid for that 90 days. So during that 90 days, WWE could potentially be like, some of them I don't think have that, but I think someone like Drake Maverick is one of the people who was included in that 90-day. So WWE could always be like, hey, you know what? You did a phenomenal job while we were doing all this. We want to keep you.
Yeah, and that'd be great, man.
I think it'd be great. I think he captured a lot of people's emotions. I think he showed people, like, you know what? He has what it takes to be a star in that cruiserweight division if he's given a chance. And I think he was one of the people, when I heard he was released, I was not surprised, but at the same time I kind of was, because he's been a good fixture on WTV, like especially when the cruiserweight, the 24/7 title started. They did the thing with the Authors of Pain, which I think kind of hurt the Authors of Pain more than anything.
Yeah.
but it got Drake Maverick over as a comedy act.
Yeah.
So it was kind of shocking to hear his name being released. There wasn't a lot of other people I was too shocked by. I mean, Mike Chioda surprised me.
Yeah.
Cain Velasquez wasn't too surprising, although it was disappointing. But the thing with Cain Velasquez is Cain Velasquez is phenomenally talented, but he came in injured. He actually got injured in his last fight in the UFC. He fought Francis Ngannou on the first ESPN event, I believe it was. And his leg actually buckled when he got hit by an uppercut. Ngannou rocked him and dropped him, but when he dropped, his knee buckled.
Oh, Jesus.
So Francis Ngannou hurt him, but he injured his knee on the way down. You've seen guys get knocked out. They fall awkwardly all the time.
Yeah.
Cain, unfortunately, does have a history of knee injuries and shoulder injuries and things like that. So he fell kind of awkwardly and immediately injured his knee. So he was viewed as coming in as damaged goods. So, you see Cain get released. It's not too surprising. I don't think he's a guy that was ever made for long-term success in the WWE, simply because he's a very laid-back, quiet guy. When you watched him in the UFC, I know you kind of watched during his era, because I know you watched, him versus Brock Lesnar. Yeah. He was always he was never a super outspoken guy. He was all business. He came in there and he was going to do what his job was. His job was to fight. So, if his job's to wrestle, that's what he's going to do. But he doesn't have that charismatic side to him.
Not going to have a character, yeah.
So, I think he was limited with that. But I think he could have done well in a place like AAA, which is where he originally was.
Yeah, probably so, yeah.
And hopefully when his knee recovers and the pandemic has ended, maybe he can go back to that.
Yeah, hope so.
So news broke. Undertaker signed a 15-year contract. What are your thoughts on this? It'll end when he's 70 years old in 2034.
I mean, yeah, he probably should have always had something like that at this point, and especially at this point. It's like, yeah, why not?
I felt for a long time he was going to be a WWE lifer, and I think this just kind of... That obviously doesn't mean he's going to be wrestling till he's 70. Oh,
well, maybe he will. I don't know.
Probably not. Yeah. I think when you hear him talk, he does sound like he thinks that if they do cinematic matches like they did with AJ Styles, it could prolong his career a little bit, which I can agree, because he doesn't have to go out there, work for 20 straight minutes, be hurt, take a bunch of bumps. He can take their time. They can get the right shots, the right edits. It could probably prolong his career a little bit. But, I mean, you even hear him talk. He seems pretty open to the fact that he's near the end.
Oh, yeah. And I think I heard that this Survivor Series coming up is on the exact 30-year anniversary of his debut.
Wow.
So that would be a perfect last match right there. Survivor
Series. It would be.
So I hope they do that, but who knows?
I would like to think so, but then the other way of looking at it is he debuted at Survivor Series, but WrestleMania is his legacy.
Yeah.
So it'll probably end at WrestleMania.
Yeah.
One way or the other. No, I like the idea of Undertaker being under a long-term contract like that. I think it shows his loyalty, and it shows WWE's loyalty to him as well. He's going to continue getting paid by them well after he stops stepping in the ring and well after he stops making appearances for the company.
Yeah, as he should be. Good.
Yeah. He's been probably the most loyal guy in the history of the business.
Yeah.
Now, on the opposite end of things, Sting's no longer under contract with WWE.
Oh, man.
You've heard this, right?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
Now, there is talks that he could be under another Legends deal here soon, but he's been tweeting a lot about AEW since the news broke. Could you see him potentially going to AEW in a similar role to guys like DDP and, Jake the Snake, where they come in, don't necessarily work matches, but they work with the younger guys and help get them over, maybe even in a backstage role?
Yeah, I mean, that's probably what it's going to be. I don't think he'll probably wrestle. I mean, maybe.
I don't think so. Yeah. I mean, Sting's openly said if he was going to wrestle again, he would only come back to face Undertaker.
Yeah.
So that's not going to happen in AEW now.
No, not now. Yeah. Not like it would.
But, I mean, I think he probably has a good relationship with the Rhodes family. It being on TNT, it's kind of hard not to draw comparisons to WCW.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I could easily see Sting wanting to help them out. But he also did openly say he wanted to end his career being with the WWE, so maybe not.
Yeah. He might just stay.
Yeah, it's really hard to say. That'll be interesting to keep an eye on. Speaking of AEW, Mike Tyson will be presenting the TNT Championship to the winner of Cody and Lance Hoyt at its or Lance Archer.
Yeah, same
Is it
thing.
Lance Archer?
Yeah, Lance
Lance Hoyt,
Archer.
Lance
Yeah,
Archer.
yeah.
Yeah, I said that and I was like, wait, Lance Hoyt was his WWE name, right?
I think it's his real name.
That's his real name. That's
Yeah,
right. Lance Archer versus Cody at Double or Nothing.
yeah.
He'll present the TNT Championship, and this is a pretty good move by AEW, I think. I've seen a lot of comments. Ooh, maybe 20 years ago this would have been a good idea, but
Ah,
people have got to realize, with these videos that have been coming out here recently, and him saying he's back and he's going to make a comeback for some exhibition matches, he's a mainstream hit again.
yeah. I mean, capitalize on the recent hype. It's a good idea.
Absolutely, and
Yeah,
it gets Mike Tyson in people's eyes who might not know he's planning on making a comeback for exhibition.
yeah. So it benefits both
Have you
parties. Yeah,
have you seen the videos of Mike Tyson training?
a little bit. Yeah,
53 years old. That guy is still scary.
yeah. Don't slow down.
I-
No.
no, the thing for him, I don't think he'll lose his power. It doesn't even look like he lost his speed. The thing that would be interesting if he does make a comeback, even for exhibition, is what kind of gas tank does he have? At 53 years old, I think cardio would be the main thing.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah.
But for those short spurts, he still looked phenomenal. And you still would not want to be hit by that man.
No, not at all.
Yeah, no, he's a scary dude even today. And you look at if you've seen that recent video where he's wearing that Clippers shirt and he's just like covered in sweat, he looks lean, like more lean than he has in a long time. Like he looks like he's in phenomenal shape right now. So that it could be interesting. There's been talks that he and Evander Holyfield will be doing the charity match, which Evander Holyfield is of course the one whose ear was infamously bitten off by Mike Tyson
Yeah.
in their fight. But obviously those two have since become friends. Mike is obviously a completely different person now than he was during that time.
Yeah.
I do think that'd be pretty cool. As long as it's just for exhibition. I don't want to see these guys going out and having a real pro boxing match at, 50 years old. I think Evander's nearly 60. I don't think anybody wants to see that. But, them going out there just having some fun would be cool. I heard somebody made the joke that if they do it, they should give Evander some wrestling headgear so his ears are covered.
Maybe so. Yeah.
That way Mike can't get a little
Not
little
this
taste.
time, Mike. No.
Yeah. But yeah, man, Mike Tyson definitely has a lot of people talking right now, and for good reason. It'll be cool to see him on that AEW event, and I'm interested to see what happens with him, man. I really am.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of want to watch the pay-per-view, but I kind of don't want to spend $50 either. So.
Yeah, that's understandable right now. I actually did just spend the $65 on the UFC pay-per-view. But my thing is with that, man, I'm going to be 100% honest. A lot of people will be like, oh, they're a corporation, they don't deserve it. But at the same time, the way I look at it, man, AEW, UFC, they're putting on events for us during this time.
Oh, I know.
And the least I view we can do is give them money to help them out, make sure they don't go bankrupt during this time.
No, it's
because
true.
the UFC, and the AEW, they're having to use full-fledged arenas. Even if they're using small arenas, they're still having to rent these arenas. And that costs a lot of money to rent these venues. And then they don't get any ticket sales. So they're bleeding money in some sort. UFC 249, which we'll get to here in a minute, actually did 700,000 pay-per-view buys.
Oh, wow.
Which, let's do the math on that, $64.99. So they made $45.4 million off that event, pay-per-view sales.
Very nice.
Yeah, good. Like, I'm happy to hear that. Like, there was a lot of people, like, talking about streaming that event, and I'm like, no, man, I'm paying for this event. They're going out, they're doing all the right things. The least we can do is make sure that, the UFC and their fighters are able to make some money off this. Yeah. But, yeah, no, I definitely, if possible, I would like to watch that AEW event.
Yeah.
So moving on now to a different subject, the NFL.
Oh, boy.
Obviously, a lot of crazy stuff has happened. All new jerseys have been announced, but the one that's been catching a lot of flack was the one that was announced this week. And it's actually a logo that on our last podcast we were talking about. That's the Los Angeles Rams. Man, of all the jerseys that have been announced, these are by far my least favorite. I don't get it. I don't get what happened.
Yeah,
I think their old jerseys were fine. I think they could have just done an updated format of them, but instead they almost look like a like IKEA jersey or like a watered down version of Michigan's college uniforms. And when you compare them to like the Chargers uniforms, who are also in LA, like people are saying, which I might be biased because I'm a Chargers fan, but people like all across the board are like the Chargers probably have the best jerseys in the NFL now. There was a joke I saw, which it was a picture of all the new Chargers jerseys, and it said, "Man, 5-11 has never looked so good."
Jesus.
And
Yeah.
I mean, I kind of took that one on the chin. I thought it was pretty funny. I mean, you can't technically argue it, but man, they've got probably the best jerseys in the NFL. Then the other LA team, the Rams, I mean, what's happening? Like, I don't get it.
I don't
The
know.
Rams has historically had some of the better jerseys and best logos in the NFL, and now this year they've arguably got the worst logo and the worst jersey.
Well, it seems like this always happens. People change stuff, and it's always for the worse. You
Yeah,
know?
absolutely. Like one thing I like that the Colts did was the new horseshoe logo, which it's the alternate logo integrating the state of Indiana into it.
Oh yeah.
It kind of reminds me of like the Pacers logo that has the basketball with the state shape in it to go with the classic P logo.
Yeah.
Now, on some less positive NFL news, have you heard about Seahawks Quentin Dunbar and the Giants DeAndre Baker?
Oh no.
So they just turned themselves into authorities after armed robbery.
Ugh. Like
They said his lawyer, Michael, I want to say Greco or Greico,
yeah.
says, nobody is running from this. My client is innocent. I don't want him to do a minute in jail for this. If we decide that he will turn himself in, then he will do so. The Miramar Police Department is committed to this case because it has become public. The police report filed as part of the warrant alleged Dunbar was one of two people directed by New York Giants quarterback DeAndre Baker to take, quote, money and valuables, quote, from attendees of a party. One witness told police he met the NFL players at a separate party 2 days earlier and witnessed them lose, quote, about $70,000, quote. Baker turned himself into authorities Saturday morning. We believe our client is innocent of all charges. Bradford Cohen, Baker's lawyer, wrote on Instagram, we urge people not to rush to judgment. We have affidavits from several witnesses that exonerate my client. Greco previously told Wolf he'd obtained 5 sworn affidavits from witnesses who stated Dunbar was not involved in the alleged robbery. He also told authorities he'd received information that, quote, star witnesses, quote, were planning to recant their story within 48 hours, but the Miramar Police Department spokesperson said that hadn't occurred yet, per Wolf. We have taped sworn statements from 4 victims and 1 witness. If they're changing their statements, we welcome them to come into our police department and give us a new statement. Tanya Ruiz told ESPN, both Dunbar, 27, and Baker, 22, are Miami natives. Dunbar spent his first 5 years of his NFL career with the Washington Redskins after going undrafted out of the University of Florida in 2015. He was traded to the Seahawks in March. So, yeah, I mean, maybe they are innocent. I mean, obviously innocent until proven guilty, but definitely not a good look.
No, not a good look at all.
For this to be happening. Because it's one of those where the unfortunate thing I've always heard is even if you're proven innocent, that reputation never gets taken away. I'd like to think these guys are innocent, but if they're not, it kind of begs the question of, as an NFL player, why do you need to rob people?
Yeah, that just kills me. Wow.
Which makes me believe they probably didn't.
Yeah.
Personally, I don't see what the benefit would be of it, man.
No,
I feel like they've already got so much money.
Yeah, unless they're just not thinking clearly, I guess. I don't know.
Which, I mean, obviously, can happen.
Yeah.
Some people are just greedy. It's not like we haven't seen sports stars do stuff like that in the past. But I don't see it. I don't see why they would do that, man.
No, it doesn't make a lot of sense. But I
Yeah,
guess
but
we'll
not a
see.
whole lot does in today's
Yeah.
modern world.
No, no, that's true. Very true.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, the NBA, I see a lot of players are ready for the NBA to return. They're kind of pushing for it, especially with Florida, allowing um, sports to happen. A lot of people are thinking that maybe the NBA should go to Florida and continue the season in Florida with, strict testing
Yeah.
and just kind of finish the season there with no fans. I do kind of think that if they can do it the right way, that would probably be the place to go.
Yeah, if they can do it the right way, by all means.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then speaking of no fans, Joe Buck has said that he believes that if there's no fans in attendance for the NFL season, that Fox will pipe in crowd noise
Oh
and
boy.
potentially CGI fans into the
Oh
stadium
no 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 no.
to allow for a better viewer experience. Yeah, my reaction is the same as yours. No, that's not going to work.
I mean,
I, I I hope he's just speculating. I really
yeah,
do.
he probably is.
Because
It's
man,
completely fake. Like who? Like it's just weird. I don't
well, and
know.
it's like it's gonna look like it's gonna feel like you're watching a sitcom if you have piped-in crowd noise.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like nobody's gonna fall for a CGI audience. They know crowds aren't there.
Oh man.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting doing all this stuff with no fans.
Yeah.
Uh, the UFC event was interesting with no fans, which I guess we can kind of jump into this. So UFC 249 took place last Saturday, May 9th. Like I said before, did 700,000 pay-per-view buys, estimated $45.4 million in pay-per-view sales generated. Man, this was a great card from top to bottom. It was a little weird watching this fight with no crowd,
Yeah.
but at the same time, man, I kind of liked it. Thought it was really cool. You could actually hear the corners. Greg Hardy, who former NFL player, fought on the main card, actually mentioned that in the first round, he was getting hit with leg kicks by Jorgen De Castro, and he heard Daniel Cormier on commentary say, the problem that Hardy's going to run into is he's not checking these leg kicks. And if he keeps letting these leg kicks land, Jorgen De Castro is going to take his legs apart. And Greg Hardy said he actually heard Daniel Cormier and started checking leg kicks in the second round.
Yeah.
And ironically enough, when he checked one of the leg kicks, Jorgen had thrown it and was a little far away. And instead of hitting with his shin, he hit with his foot and broke his foot.
Oh.
And the disappointing part was Jorgen De Castro was winning the fight up to that point. And after that, he did not throw a single punch for the remaining 2 rounds.
Oh man.
Which, I get it's tough to pivot on your foot
Yeah.
when you have a broken foot, but at the same time, you can still use your fists with a broken foot.
Yeah. Do what you
I mean,
can.
Rich,
Yeah.
going back to 2010, Chuck Liddell's last fight, he threw a kick against Rich Franklin, and he broke Rich Franklin's arm. Rich Franklin used that same hand to knock out Chuck Liddell.
Wow.
So, I mean, to say you can't throw punches with a broken foot, I mean, it happens a lot in the UFC. It's not the first time it's happened, but it's one of the first times I can recall seeing a guy do nothing.
Yeah. Like that's the worst thing you can do. Yeah.
Yeah, but the prelims, man, they got off to a hard start. There was Nico Price versus Vicente Luque. It was a phenomenal fight. Vicente Luque ended up winning by TKO against Nico Price. It was a great fight. Then you had Michelle Waterson versus Carla Esparza. It was kind of a controversial decision. It was a very close fight. It wasn't one of those where I would call it a robbery. I saw a lot of people complaining it was a robbery that Carla Esparza won. I know you didn't watch the UFC events, but it was not anything I would call a robbery. It was too close of a fight, and it wasn't a very high-paced action fight where like one person completely outclassed the other. I thought they both clearly each won a round. And then there was a round where it was like whoever you gave that round to won the fight. The controversy for me was it was a split decision. One judge scored it 29-28 for Carla Esparza, 2-1, which is how I had it personally. I know a lot of people had it for Waterson. That's fine. I can't argue that Waterson couldn't have won. But then one judge had it 30-27, 3-0 for Michelle Waterson. And then the other judge had it 3-0 for Carla Esparza.
Oh, yeah.
So to me, it's one of those where how can two judges have the complete
Yeah.
opposite score? I've seen judges have, 29-28 and 28-29. They score it for opposite people. That's one thing. But that alone to me was like, okay, we're going to have a bad night with judges scoring, aren't we? And then in the next fight, it was former UFC heavyweight champion Fabricio Verdum versus Alexei Olenek. Fabricio Verdum coming off a 2-year USADA suspension. He did not look good in this fight. Fabricio Verdum, has always been in relatively good shape. He had a bit of a gut going. It's hard to know what he was doing in those 2 years off, but he did not look in the best of shape. And, man, that first round, I thought he was going to get TKO'd because Alexei Olenek was just piecing him up with hard shots for 5 straight minutes. Very clear 10-9 round for Olenek. The next round, more of the same. Verdum got a takedown, got his back, but then Olenek actually ended up getting up and just started tagging him again. Very clearly, Olenek won the round. And then Olenek got taken down in the next round, and Verdum kept working for submissions, but did end up just kind of holding Olenek down for the third round. I had it 29-28 easily for Olenek, and Verdum just did not look good. But, man, wouldn't you know it, we had a split decision. One of the judges scored it for Verdum. One of the judges scored it 2-1 for Verdum, and watching it, it was very clear Verdum did not win more than the third round. And I was just like, man, these judges tonight, I don't get it. And I really was worried Olenek was about to get a decision taken away from him. And then Anthony Pettis versus Cowboy Cerrone happened, the rematch from 2012. This was a great fight, by the way. I highly recommend going and watching it. Absolutely great fight all around. These two were, exchanging kicks, punches. Pettis was landing hard shots. Cowboy was countering. Cowboy started using his wrestling very effectively. I had him up rounds 1 and 2. I had him up 2-0. I was like, well, he's winning this fight. I mean, Pettis is going to have to get a finish. And in the third round, Cowboy landed a really hard head kick that clearly stunned Pettis. And Cowboy, started swinging. And then Pettis got him with an eye poke. And Cowboy complained to the ref it was an eye poke. And Pettis just charged in and started swinging. And you saw Cowboy mouth, what the...
Yeah, yeah.
And, he ended up kept fighting. But through that, Cowboy recovered, and I had him up 3-0. I had it 30-27. And we had a unanimous decision for Anthony Pettis.
Oh.
And everyone I've spoken to, all media outlets I've seen, had it 3-0, Cowboy Cerrone.
Yeah.
The quote from Anthony Pettis, keep in mind there's no crowd so you could hear him. When the decision was announced, he said, "Fuck, I'll take it."
Oh, enough said right there.
He actually looked at Bruce Buffer when the decision was announced and raised his eyebrows like, wait, what?
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, that was his reaction, was, oh, okay.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, no, Cowboy. So it was three straight fights where I was like, man, these judges are just terrible.
Yeah.
But, man, then you had a main card start. You had the Jorgen de Castro, Greg Hardy fight I mentioned. Not a lot happened, but Greg Hardy did look good with his counter fighting, landed some hard leg kicks of his own, ended up taking the decision home. Then you had the featherweight fight between Calvin Kattar and Jeremy Stephens. Jeremy Stephens was actually the lone fighter to miss weight. Missed weight by 4.5 pounds. Obviously, you could consider that unprofessional because he is the only fighter to miss weight. But he's only missed weight one other time in his career, I believe, and that was years and years ago. So it's kind of hard to hate on the guy for missing weight during a pandemic. He did end up losing. He started off really strong, but then he ended up getting hit with a huge elbow in the second round that dropped him, buckled him. Calvin Kattar came in with some vicious ground and pound, busted him open with an elbow, and ended up winning the fight. Huge performance from Calvin Kattar, who showed he's a top featherweight. And that's when, after that, was the video I sent you, which was Francis Ngannou versus Jairzinho Rozenstruik. And, man, Francis Ngannou is terrifying.
Oh.
I know you saw that one, that 20-second knockout. I know at the very least you saw
yeah.
that one.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Man, and here's the thing. A lot of people were talking about there was absolutely no technique. He looked sloppy. I'm not going to argue any of those points. Yeah, there was no technique. It was sloppy. But here's something that needs to be considered. That man threw 5 punches. One of them landed, and Rose. That is the kind of power that Francis Ngannou carries. And let me pull up Francis Ngannou's page really quickly, just so I can tell you something about the streak he's on right now. So he went on an unbeaten streak. He was 11-1. He had one loss in his career. It was his second ever fight, and that was back in December of 2013. He lost by decision. He went on an unbeaten streak where he ended up being 11-1 after KOing Alistair Overeem. Got a title fight against Stipe Miocic. Miocic picked him apart after Ngannou gassed out in the first round. And then in the next fight, he fought Derek Lewis, and he looked very tentative. He actually didn't really do much of anything the entire fight and lost the decision. But since then, he's on a 4-fight unbeaten streak. He knocked out top contender Curtis Blades in 45 seconds. Then in his next fight, he knocked out former UFC heavyweight champion Cain Velasquez in 26 seconds.
Wow.
And then in his fight after that, he knocked out former UFC heavyweight Junior Dos Santos in 1 minute and 11 seconds.
Wow.
And then in this fight, he knocked out Jairzinho Rozenstruik in 20 seconds. And Rozenstruik had a 76-8 professional kickboxing record and a 10-0 mixed martial arts record with 9 knockouts heading into that fight.
Oh, wow.
So it's not like he was fighting a slouch. And Rozenstruik actually was coming off of a knockout win over Alistair Overeem with 4 seconds left in the fight. He was actually about to lose that fight by decision, connected with a punch, ripped open that nasty gash on Overeem's lip. I think you might have seen that picture. Yep, that was Rozenstruik that did that. And put him out with 4 seconds left. And before that, he actually knocked out former UFC heavyweight champion Andrei Arlovsky at the Masvidal Diaz event in 29 seconds.
Yeah, wow.
So, I mean, this isn't like he fought a slouch and did this.
No.
Now, have you seen who is calling for a fight with Ngannou? Because obviously Ngannou wants the heavyweight title next. But it looks like we might be getting something else instead. And I think as someone who doesn't watch a lot of UFC, I think even you'd be interested in watching this one. Because Francis Ngannou has been called out by UFC light heavyweight champion John Jones.
Oh, no.
John Jones is teasing finally moving up to heavyweight to fight Francis Ngannou.
Because he's never been heavyweight, has he?
He's never been at heavyweight, and it's been people have wanted it for years. So let me get this pulled up. See if I can get up the posts between each other. Pulled up. So there was a heavyweight fighter. There was a light heavyweight fighter, Oven St. Preux, who moved up to heavyweight on short notice that fought on Wednesday's event against Ben Rothwell. He did lose a decision, but John Jones did comment on it. He made comments about how it made it feel real to him because John Jones has fought Oven St. Preux. He said with a little bit more cardio, that could have been the cherry on top for him, and he could have won that fight. He was talking about how it made it all much more real for him, and he could picture himself. And he started talking about Ngannou, and Ngannou kind of was like, "Yeah, let's do it. Let's get the bag." Talking about money, and he shared a video of Ngannou's fight where he's getting picked apart by Stipe Miocic, and said, it'll be more of the same. And he actually commented on Ngannou's post about it and said, "Bro, with all that power comes a limited amount of time it's effective. If you can't get me out within the first or second round, good luck keeping up with my fight pace / fight IQ. I'll literally pick you apart. What's your plan to defeat one of the most clever fighters in the sport? Oh, easy. I'm just going to swing at his opponent, at his head, and knock him out," said every opponent I've ever faced.
Yeah.
And people are clamoring for this one because what a lot of people are, I was saying, John Jones has been very hittable in his past few fights, and you don't want to be hittable against Francis Ngannou because it just takes one. He posted a picture of John Jones getting tagged in one of his recent fights where it looks like John Jones got hit pretty hard. And he said, "Everybody do have punching power, my friend, but not my power. I hit you like this, you won't keep going."
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, and Jones actually dismissed it and said, his haymaker is too slow to catch him, and he would, quote, love that big money fight around now. Send the deal. Says he has absolutely nothing left to prove at light heavyweight. That is the argument I would disagree with, because to me, I believe John Jones lost his past 2 fights by decision. He was given decisions in both of them. I believe Thiago Santos beat him. And by the way, Thiago Santos, and I believe the first or second round, tore every single ligament in his knee.
Oh.
And I still believe Thiago Santos did enough to win the decision. In the fight
Wow.
with Dominic Reyes, I definitely believe Dominic Reyes, even more clearly than the Thiago Santos fight, won, and John Jones was again given the decision. The UFC and Dominic Reyes want the rematch, and apparently John Jones has said, I'll do the rematch, but they need to make it worth my while. I want them to treat it like a super fight, and I want to be paid for it. But he's not asking for that for any other light heavyweight contender. And that, to me, almost comes across like John Jones is obviously asking for this money because he knows he has a chance to lose against this guy.
Yeah.
And he knows he arguably, I think deep down in his heart, he knows he arguably did lose last time against Dominic Reyes. He goes on to say, he's gone on and said he very clearly won. It really wasn't that clear to me. I watched it, and I had Dominic Reyes up 1, 2, and 3, and I had Jones winning 4 and 5. Do the math. 3-2.
Yeah.
And I actually think that in their first fight, Gustafsson should have won the decision against John Jones. So, I mean, to say he doesn't have anything left to prove at light heavyweight, I would disagree. It's kind of interesting to me that John Jones wants to move up to heavyweight and says he has nothing left to prove at light heavyweight. Now that light heavyweight is the most interesting it's been in years. 2 years ago, nobody cared about light heavyweight. They're like, there's nobody besides John Jones. There's no contenders worthy of facing John Jones. Now there's a lot of people who are like, John Jones has arguably lost his last 2 fights. There's plenty of contenders who could beat him.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. I do think that if the fight did go past the first or second round, yes, John Jones would probably beat Ngannou. But here's the thing. I do think John Jones has never felt that kind of power before. And Francis Ngannou, since the loss to Stipe Miocic, has seemed like a different fighter. And I don't think that John Jones wants to handle that kind of punching power. So, I mean, we'll see what happens. Maybe they book that fight.
Yeah. Wow.
Then in the co-main event... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Is there an update with the legal issues with John Jones?
So, so that was something we had talked about last time. So he was given a few days of house arrest and probation, and that was it.
Oh, yeah, imagine that.
Yep. The UFC will not be punishing him because the justice system already did, which... Oh, well, I mean, I guess, hopefully he at least learns from it, but it's happened too many times for me to believe that.
All right.
There is, the co-main event, though, was for the Bantamweight Championship. It was a former Bantamweight champion, former 2-time Bantamweight champion, Dominic Cruz, and easily the best Bantamweight of all time. And he was challenging after a 3.5-year layoff. His last fight was actually the fight where he lost the Bantamweight Championship to Cody Garbrandt. He was challenging Bantamweight champion Henry Cejudo. Started off, and Cejudo was kind of picking him apart with leg kicks, and Cruz got off to a very slow start. He actually kind of started picking things up in the second round, started moving a little bit more smoothly, and then there was a headbutt. There was a clash of heads that busted open Henry Cejudo. And after that happened, there was a little break, obviously, and Cejudo was bloodied. And when the break ended, Cejudo, started pressing the action, and he actually ended up landing a knee that dropped Dominic Cruz. He swarmed Cruz with punches on the ground. He landed 11 unanswered shots. But Dominic Cruz started working his way back up to his feet, was actually up against the fence, and was starting to stand up. And with 2 seconds left in the round, referee Keith Peterson stepped in and stopped the fight.
Oh.
And Dominic Cruz immediately looked at him, held his hands up, and said, "What are you doing?"
Yeah. Wow.
The argument, I think I can see the argument on both sides. You took 11 unanswered strikes. You've got to show the referee something. You can't just take 11 unanswered strikes. But also, he's standing up, and there's 2 seconds left in the round.
Yeah.
And it's not like these are heavyweights, these are lighter weight fighters. They can. It's not like these are the most punishing of shots.
Yeah.
Um, I think you could have let the fight go on a little bit longer, but hey, it's at the referee's discretion. He's there to look after the safety of the fighter, and so he did. Now, some controversy came after the fight, which I'll get to in a second. But afterwards, Henry Cejudo announced his retirement from mixed martial arts. He, after successfully defending against Dominic Cruz, he told Joe Rogan, I'm 33 years old. I'm ready to start a family. I've worked my entire life to get to this point. I'm not letting anybody take this away from me. I'm retiring on top. A lot of people don't believe him, but people who are close to him and know him say, yes, this is for real.
Yeah.
I would say that I would personally make the argument, and I know a lot of people have been debating this, that Henry Cejudo has to be considered the best combat sports athlete of all time. Not the best mixed martial arts fighter of all time. Yeah, I think he's definitely top 10 pound for pound all time. But resume-wise, he has to be the best combat sports athlete of all time. So when you look into his resume, he was an Arizona State Golden Gloves boxing champion, which is obviously amateur boxing, but he was a state Golden Glove boxing champion. At the age of 21 years old in 2008, he went on to win the Olympic freestyle wrestling gold medal. And then he moved on to mixed martial arts after that. In his move to mixed martial arts, he went, he went 6-0 before being signed by the UFC, and he actually fought at bantamweight in his UFC debut, then moved down to flyweight, and he actually he went 4-0 in his career in his UFC career. So he was 10-0 before fighting Demetrius Johnson the first time. When 2 minutes and 49 seconds into the first round, Demetrius Johnson TKO'd him due to a knee and punches. Following that, he moved on to fight longtime consensus number 2 flyweight in the world behind Demetrius Johnson, Joseph Benavidez. He lost via split decision. Cejudo was deducted 1 point in round 1 due to repeated low blows, so that obviously affected his scoring. And I will tell you, watching that fight, I still had Cejudo winning. I had Cejudo winning, so it would be 30-27 if he won all 3 rounds and hadn't had a point taken away. So I had it 29-27 Cejudo. I had it at best 28-28 a draw. I did not have Benavidez winning 2 rounds. I had him winning maybe 1. 2 of the judges had Benavidez 29-27, which means they had him up 2 rounds to 1. A lot of people didn't see it that way. I personally felt like that was a very bad decision. I thought Cejudo was robbed. I went back and watched it later on and thought the same thing. I thought it was either 29-27 Cejudo or 28-28 draw. But following that fight, he moved on to fight former number 1 contender Wilson Hayes at UFC 215, and he TKO'd him 25 seconds into the second round. He then went on to fight at UFC 218 Sergio Pettis, another top flyweight contender at the time and younger brother of Anthony Pettis. He won by unanimous decision after dominating him. He then fought flyweight champion and longtime champion who actually held the record at this point of most consecutive title defenses in UFC history and had a win over Henry Cejudo in the past. They went on to fight a 5-round decision that won fight of the night. It was a split decision. One of the judges scored it for Demetrius Johnson, and 2 judges scored it for Henry Cejudo, declaring him your winner and new champion. I did have Henry Cejudo winning that fight live, which took a lot for me to say, because I was reading Dominic Cruz's name. Demetrius Johnson has been like my longtime favorite fighter, and I've always wanted. That was always been like my dream fight when I was younger. So it kind of broke me watching that fight. I remember we were at a sports bar watching, and I remember looking at Rebecca when the 5th round started, and I said, Demetrius has to win this round. And Rebecca could vouch for the fact that with 20 seconds left in the round, I actually had my face in my hands like this.
Yeah.
Because it's one of those where, you're watching basically your longtime idol and somebody you looked up to, and you know that reign is over. Yeah. So it was considered a controversial decision, but he beat Demetrius Johnson by decision to win the flyweight championship. So he's beaten. So at this point, he's a state Golden Gloves boxing champion, Olympic gold medalist, and has now won the flyweight title, beating the greatest flyweight of all time and who some people consider the best pound-for-pound fighter in the world. He then goes on to fight current bantamweight champion, at the time, bantamweight champion TJ Dillashaw, who is considered either the best or second best bantamweight of all time. I had him as second best bantamweight of all time just because when he and Cruz fought, Dominic Cruz did win. So I think you kind of have to put him one rank below Dominic Cruz all time for that alone. TJ Dillashaw moved down in weight to challenge for the flyweight title. So in Cejudo's first title defense, he fought the bantamweight champion and actually won by TKO in 32 seconds on the UFC's ESPN Plus debut. And it became even more impressive after the fight when it was discovered that Dillashaw had tested positive in pre- and post-fight drug tests for EPO, which is something that Lance Armstrong had tested positive for that. Which really helps with your endurance and things like that. And Dillashaw has always been known as a fighter with incredible cardio. And there were comments made 2 years before he fought Dillashaw by a former teammate about him using EPO when they were going to fight. So it kind of makes you wonder if he had been on it the whole time and was just better at hiding it.
Jeez.
So they were going to have a rematch for the bantamweight title, so Cejudo was going to move up. I need to probably get some water. Throat's getting a little dry. They were going to rematch at bantamweight with Dillashaw's title on the line, but Dillashaw tested positive. He was stripped of the title. And Cejudo then would fight at UFC 238 on June 8th, 2019 against number one bantamweight contender Marlon Moraes. People actually thought Marlon Moraes could probably beat TJ Dillashaw. And it did look like in the first round, Moraes was going to beat Cejudo because he was picking him apart with hard shots and leg kicks. But all of a sudden, near the end of the second round, Cejudo kind of started taking over and actually won by TKO. 4 minutes, 51 seconds in the third round. It was a good stoppage, probably was overdue at that point. And then just fought May 9th against Dominic Cruz, second round TKO, controversial or not. So you look at his career, he's 16-2. I openly told you I think one of his losses shouldn't have been there. So you could argue he should have been 17-1. But let's say 16-2, two-weight division champion, defended the titles in both weight classes. He's fought three of the best guys all time in those two weight classes. You know, and then he's got an Olympic gold medal. He's a Golden Gloves boxing champion. Man, I mean, is there anybody out there who has a better resume for best combat sports athlete of all time?
No, I don't think so.
I mean, that is an absolutely phenomenal career, and I don't blame him for retiring. You know, a lot of people think that it was cheap to retire after a controversial win, but you know what? Whether you like the stoppage or not, there was 11 unanswered shots. You got to, at the same time, you got to show the referee something. Guys have been standing before and had a fight called, so just I was standing up isn't necessarily the best argument. But, you know, here's where the controversy comes in. Dominic Cruz said he was not completely hurt when he was standing up, but then the controversy came out when the next day he said that as soon as he stepped in the cage, he was wondering if fighters were allowed to veto the referees and could ask for a new referee to come out. And he said that when he was in the octagon, referee Keith Peterson smelled of alcohol and cigarettes.
Oh, no.
That is a pretty harsh accusation to make.
Yeah.
That's a very serious accusation to make as well. So, and Dominic Cruz is not somebody who I see as making excuses. You know, referee Herb Dean has come out and said, you know, if it's completely false. If a referee was smelling that way, we as officials have a duty. We would not let him go out like that.
Yeah.
We have a duty to our fighters. But, I mean, it's...
Never know.
He was also the referee that missed the eye poke in the Cowboy fight. So it's one of those where, man, you kind of wonder. Brendan Schaub actually talked about it on his podcast Below the Belt. He said, you know, I look at referee Keith Peterson and I go, yeah, probably fucking does smell like alcohol and cigarettes. I can see it. Keith Peterson did kind of clap back at Dominic Cruz. He posted a picture of Dominic Cruz on his way down to the mat looking clearly rocked. and he captioned the picture "me after a night of alcohol and cigarettes."
Jesus.
So the referee clearly did not take too kindly to Dominic Cruz saying that.
Yeah.
So obviously a little bit of controversy, but I don't think it takes anything away from Cejudo's performance. Now, the main event, Justin Gaethje versus former interim champion Tony Ferguson for the, again, interim lightweight championship. This was supposed to be Tony Ferguson versus Khabib Nurmagomedov, the long-awaited, five-timed book fight. I had told you that you wanted to watch this fight, and then the pandemic happened. Obviously, my thoughts and prayers go out to Khabib's family. His father, Abdulmanap, was actually just recently placed in a medically induced coma.
Oh.
He has been brought out of it. He's recovering, but he did have, it was due to pneumonia, but he did have a heart attack caused by COVID-19, which resulted in pneumonia, which is why they put him in the medically induced coma. He is recovering. He is awake now, and he is doing better. So we are very happy to hear that. But it was unfortunate that the Tony Ferguson-Khabib fight for the fifth time again did not happen. A lot of people view this as a foregone conclusion. You know, Justin Gaethje has looked phenomenal in recent fights, but Tony Ferguson is on a 12-fight unbeaten streak. He hadn't lost in 8 years. You know, it was one of those where, okay, we're going to get Tony Ferguson versus Khabib when this is all over. And I remember I actually told Rebecca, I told my mom, and I told all my buddies who watched the UFC building up to this fight, I said, I don't think we're getting Tony Ferguson versus Khabib. Because I think Justin Gaethje is a terrible matchup for Tony Ferguson. Told people, and I've loved Tony Ferguson for a long time. I'm sure you know this because I'm sure you probably remember Tony Ferguson from Team Lesnar on The Ultimate Fighter back in the day.
Oh.
He was actually the winner of the Brock Lesnar Jr. Dos Santos season. But I've been a longtime fan of Tony Ferguson, but I just, you know, Tony Ferguson's a guy who goes out and he does get hit a lot, and Justin Gaethje is known for hitting people and hitting people hard. And I thought, you know, Justin Gaethje's best chances would be in the first 2 to 3 rounds, and he'd probably be tired by then because I figured he'd probably put all his energy into finishing the fight, and then at the end of the fight is when Ferguson would take over. And man, that was not the case. It was just a methodical beating. Ferguson did drop Justin Gaethje at the end of, I believe it was the second round, but then the bell did ring as Ferguson charged in. It's one of those where, you know, if there was 30 seconds left to go, we might not be having this discussion.
Oh.
But that was the only round that Ferguson had actually won on the judges' scorecards. It did go to a 5th round, and it was stopped in the 5th round by referee Herb Dean stepping in. After Justin Gaethje began landing shots, every time he was landing punches in the final few rounds, Tony Ferguson would kind of just like turn and walk away, but he actually started shaking his head. He had a fractured orbital, blood was coming out of his nose, he had a cut under his eye, and he was just doing this and was walking away. And Herb Dean kind of just stepped in and was like, okay, enough. Justin Gaethje is the interim champion and will be fighting the undefeated Khabib Nurmagomedov. And I think that is a phenomenal fight. Standing, obviously, we've got to assume Justin Gaethje is the better fighter. And, you know, Khabib's game is he's going to push you up against the fence. He's going to take you down. He's going to wear you out. He's going to ground and pound you, and he's going to submit you. But Justin Gaethje is an all-American wrestler. So I think this is a very serious threat for Khabib, and I can't wait for this fight to happen. Now, there was some controversy in the fights on Wednesday between Anthony Smith and Glover Teixeira. Man, I'll tell you what. I'm glad we've had a few days for me to kind of calm down after watching that. So Anthony Smith came out and he looked great in the first round. So the problem was his corner was just nonstop jab, Anthony, jab 1-2. Okay, now let's throw a front kick, body kick, Anthony. And there's no crowd there to dilute him hearing his corner. So instead of just, okay, that's what I'm going to throw next, he was immediately throwing everything they were calling. He was throwing at a very high pace, at a pace that, especially a guy that weighs 205 pounds, is not going to be able to keep up. And that's actually what happened. He ended up gassing out by the end of the second round. And it was a 5-round fight. And when he got on his stool after the second round, it was clear he had no cardio left. Not long into the third round, Glover Teixeira just started picking him apart and actually dropped him with a punch. And when I say dropped him, if you go and watch the highlights, Anthony Smith folded in half when he fell to the cage. Glover just kind of overwhelmed him with strikes for the rest of the round. He actually exploded Anthony Smith's cauliflower ear. Blood just started pouring out of his cauliflower ear. He swelled up Anthony's eye. There was a cut under both eyes. Round 4, he was sent out. And honestly, to me, the fight should have been stopped in between rounds by his corner. But he goes out for round 4, and he takes more punishment. He's just getting obliterated with punches on the ground. And you see him reach down and hand something to the ref. And you realize later on it was his tooth. He goes to the corner after the 4th round because he made it all the way through the 4th round. I think the referee should have stepped in. But he goes to the corner after the 4th round, and he sits down, and he says, "My teeth are falling out." And instead of his coaches saying, "Okay, we're done," because to me, if a fighter looks at his coaches and says, "Guys, my teeth are falling out,"
Yeah.
to me, he's telling them, "Guys, I'm not going to quit. I'm too tough to do that, obviously, but you need to get me out of here.
Yeah.
You've got to protect me from myself. I'm done. I've got no cardio left. I've got no energy." His corner's response was, "Okay, Anthony, breathe." Now, his corner did come out, his coach did come out and said, "Oh, well, Anthony has veneers and they fall out in practice all the time," so that's what I thought he was saying, which I get that, but at the same time, would Anthony have been panicking and telling his coaches, "My teeth are falling out," if they were his veneers?
Yeah, if he's panicking, then yeah.
So he ends up going out there. Glover ends up getting him to the ground very quickly in the 5th round and mounts him and just starts wailing on him from mount. And the referee steps in 1 minute into the 5th round, stops the fight. There was so much unnecessary damage in the fight that it was absolutely disgusting to me. Yeah. And here's the thing, referee Jason Herzog has come out and said he learned from this experience, and he's by and by a phenomenal referee usually. But he said, "I'm the one person that's responsible. I'm the person who's solely to blame." I disagree with that. Corners are given a towel for a reason.
Yeah. Yeah.
Deontay Wilder was upset with his corner for throwing the towel in his fight against Tyson Fury. But if we're being honest, that was very good for Deontay Wilder that fight did get that they threw the towel in. And the question that I keep seeing is, why is it in boxing coaches will throw the towel in all the time, but you fail to see this in MMA? If you send your fighter out there, he has a fractured orbital, he has cuts under both eyes, his cauliflower ear has exploded, I believe I read he had a broken nose, and he's got 2 teeth knocked out. Why do you let him go out for another round?
Yeah.
Why do you not go, "Hey, this is a young guy. He's in his early 30s. He's got a kid. He's got a long career. He's got years ahead of him in his career. We should protect him." You send him out there and go, "Okay, just breathe, Anthony.
Yeah.
You're tough. You can take it." It was atrocious.
Yeah.
Your job as a coach isn't to, obviously you're there to prepare the fighter, to get him ready, to teach him techniques. But on fight night, you are there to be there for his safety. If a fighter can no longer intelligently defend himself and is not there and is completely exhausted, he has no energy left, he's being pummeled into oblivion, he's getting busted up, he's being bloodied, he clearly doesn't have a chance to come back and win this fight, why do you send him out there to take more damage?
Yeah.
That is the type of fight that ends fighters' careers. I'm a fan of Anthony Smith, by the way. I like Anthony Smith. I had him winning this fight. I thought he was going to beat Glover Teixeira. Glover Teixeira impressed the hell out of me in this fight to put on the performance he did at 40 years old. But to let your fighter take that amount of damage was just disgusting. And I encourage anyone, if you're squeamish, maybe don't watch, but I encourage anyone, if you don't believe me, go on ESPN Plus and you can find the fight and watch it. Drew, I'd urge you to at least watch highlights to see what I'm talking about. There was no need for that fight to have gone on as long as it did. At the end of the day, his corner should be ashamed of themselves.
Yeah, it sounds completely disturbing.
There was no need for it. When a fighter comes to the corner and says, "My teeth are falling out," you say, "That's it, we're done." I remember when BJ Penn fought George St. Pierre. He didn't sustain any serious injuries, but after 4 rounds, he was absolutely exhausted. He clearly had no path to victory. He was being taken down. He was taking shots, and his corner said, and Jason Perillo, his boxing coach, said, "That's it, we're done." He tells the referee, "We're done. We're not doing this. There's no need." They were done. You've seen this happen before. Fighters' corners have said, "We're done. We're not going back out for another round." A cornerman who I give all the credit in the world is Duke Rufus. He is Anthony Pettis' coach. He actually coached CM Punk for his run in the UFC. Coaches former UFC champion Tyron Woodley, and he has several times been like, you know what, Pettis got hurt in his fight with Tony Ferguson, and in between rounds, he was like, my hand's broken. So he said, I broke my hand, and he was bloodied, he was beat up, and Duke said, we're stopping the fight.
Yeah, it's common sense, really.
You are there to protect your fighter. That is what Deontay Wilder's coach did in the Tyson Fury fight. Why is boxing so ahead of the times in this?
Yeah, it beats me. Jesus.
It just, as a fan of both guys, it was sad to see. There was a sequence in the fight where you hear Glover Teixeira, because keep in mind, there's no crowd noise. You hear Glover Teixeira punch Anthony Smith on the ground and say, I'm sorry, it's part of the job. Glover Teixeira did not want to punch him.
No.
The commentators after the third round thought it might be called in between rounds. The commentators after the fourth round, who, by the way, two of them, being UFC fighters, Daniel Cormier and Paul Felder, said this fight is definitely going to be stopped in between rounds. They could not believe that he was sent out for a fifth round. You could tell they were very, very clearly upset at that corner for letting him go out for another round.
Yeah. Wow.
I can't put it any other way, man. There was
crazy.
no need for that. It was disgusting, and they should be ashamed of themselves.
It's not like anybody's enjoying watching that.
No, it was not enjoyable to watch. It was enjoyable to watch up until the end of the third round. When I saw him get dropped, the way he fell, I was like, I think that fight should have been stopped when he fell. Because literally, like, if you pull up the highlight of when he gets dropped in the third round, he literally folds in half like a lawn chair on his way down to the mat. I've seen fights get stopped for less.
Yeah. Wow.
And it's just one of those, that's the type of fight where you see guys' careers are never the same, and you really hope that's not the case with him. Because Anthony Smith, let's see this. He actually had just recently challenged John Jones for the light heavyweight championship, went to a decision, and then went on to beat former number one contender Alexander Gustafsson. Yeah, he's only 31 years old.
Yeah.
He had a 3-fight undefeated streak at light heavyweight where he knocked out Rashad Evans in 53 seconds.
Wow.
Knocked out Shogun Hua in 1 minute and 29 seconds. Wow. Beat former number one contender Volkan Ozdemir in the third round via rear naked choke. Lost a decision to John Jones, and then beat former number one contender Alexander Gustafsson by rear naked choke. And then this fight happened. You don't want to see that guy's career come to an end because of a fight like this, or at least never be the same.
Yeah.
So my hope is that he will come back better. Now tonight there's another UFC event. I don't know if you'll be watching, but looks like a pretty good lineup. We've got Walt Harris versus Alistair Overeem. For those who don't know the story of Walt Harris and Anaya Blanchard, I highly recommend you watch the ESPN short that they just posted last night. It's only 15 minutes. Drew, I know your dad had commented on my post that he watched it. For people who don't know the Anaya Blanchard story, I highly recommend looking it up. UFC heavyweight Walt Harris' stepdaughter, Anaya Blanchard, went missing on her way home to Auburn in November of last year. And a police report was filed. They reported her missing. They knew something was seriously wrong, and they found her car a few days later. And there was blood in it. Not long after that, some human remains were found, and pictures were shown to Walt Harris and his wife, and he actually talks about it in the that little mini documentary, which, man, I'll admit, definitely made me cry. Yeah. Very, very hard to watch. He kind of broke down and explained that when they showed him the pictures, he knew right away because he saw the boots that she was wearing, that the remains the body was wearing, and he had just bought her those boots not many days before she went missing. So he knew it was her right away. You know, she was 19 years old. They were able to discover that she tried to fight back and reach for the gun when the guy ended up killing her. So she was trying to defend herself when it happened. And it turned out the guy was out on, I believe he was out on parole after robberies and attempted murders on his record already. So it makes you realize this guy should have never been out. Anaya should still be with her family. Something that no family should have to go through, and especially no parent should ever have to go through. Very just, I mean, I feel like you can tell by the change in my tone. Just
Yeah.
very somber situation. I remember when it happened, just hoping for the best and hearing the worst, and it was absolutely heartbreaking. So, Walt Harris was actually supposed to fight Alistair Overeem December of last year. Rosenstrike ended up stepping in for him because obviously Walt Harris backed out of the fight. He was in no condition to fight. He in January got back in the gym, realized that he said he had a dream that Anaya came to him and said, "Dad, I'm okay."
Yeah.
And he realized he needed to fight on for her. So Alistair Overeem, a longtime legend of the sport, hard to root against him, but it's going to be hard not to root for Walt Harris tonight. I think pretty much the entire world is probably rooting for Walt Harris tonight, and I do just want to say, man, win, lose, or draw, Walt Harris is a winner for even coming back, and I hope he does know deep down he's making Anaya proud by doing this.
Oh yeah.
So, yeah, I'll definitely be watching tonight. I'll be rooting for Walt Harris, but either way, very proud of him for coming back. Yeah, very, very somber thing to talk about. Kind of just remembering that video I watched earlier, and it was definitely a hard watch. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
so yeah. Been good to get back on a chat with the pack. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah.
Definitely good to talk to you again. Good to talk to the people again. Hope they enjoyed this one. Drew, do you have anything you want to say in closing? I know I kind of just went on there for a while.
No, just like you said, good to be back, and yeah, it was good talking to you. That's it, really.
Yep. Hopefully we can keep cranking out weekly episodes.
Yeah.
Don't forget to check out the personal channel of mine. The link will be in the description below.
Yep.
Be sure to keep it checking out Amateur Gaming with Blazer.
Yeah.
Great
Yep.
series with Mario. Potentially some more Lego Star Wars and a few other series. Definitely check that out on this channel. And obviously the live AEW watch-alongs you guys do. But yeah, this has been a Chat with the Pack. I'm Kyle McGee.
And I'm Drew Blazer.
Thank you all for tuning in. We'll see you next time.